As the powerful impact of the recently released Comey memos begins to be fully understood, there's still one glaring issue that remains unaddressed, and it's making me nuts. We're going to talk about that when the Resistance Report for Tuesday, April 24th begins. Hello and welcome to the Resistance Report. I'm your host, John Michael Salvato. While many have seen or heard one or more of the many interviews former FBI Director James Comey has done on television, radio, and podcasts as a part of the promotion for his book, A Higher Loyalty, which I highly recommend, there is one thing that has been a bit of a gear-grinding consistency in those interviews that I want to talk about today. Almost without exception, the question of Comey's difficult decision to release the statement about reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails just 6 days before the 2016 election has been raised over and over again. And every reporter asks if Comey regrets doing something that the media and presumably many in the Clinton campaign, although not Hillary Clinton herself, consider to have been the event that effectually threw the election. So why does that make me so insane? Because it's simply and demonstrably untrue. And it's part of the disinformation campaign, I believe, that unintentionally distracts from the Mueller investigation. Now I don't disagree that Comey is exceedingly faced with a difficult decision in that time in a matter that may have been perceived as a flawed judgment call. You know, none of us is in his shoes, but I've heard his explanation, and personally I'm not sure that his judgment call was flawed. But I'm certain of one thing. I'm certain that his decision did not cost Hillary Clinton the election. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in November by 2.9 million votes. She won the election. That means that Comey's memo, if it had any effect at all, didn't throw the election. Certainly it may have influenced some folks to vote for Russian operatives like Jill Stein, but it did not throw the election. It only means that if he hadn't made those announcements, she would have won by a 3 or 4 or 5 million vote margin. The election was thrown by one thing and one thing only, and that is a flawed and seriously outdated electoral college process, which relies on the absurdity of an electoral college who were directly influenced, and as many believe we will see when Mueller's investigation is complete, bought and paid for by the Russian government in collusion with Donald J. Trump. Hillary's defeat was not a defeat in the voting booths. It was a defeat by Russian aggression and criminal interference in our election, a process which has to date resulted in more than 20 indictments, 4 guilty pleas, and which has shocked those who were unaware of Donald J. Trump's criminal enterprise, which has been largely directed and controlled by the Russian mobsters and oligarchs for more than 20 years. Might that be why Hillary Clinton, by all accounts, the person who should be the legitimate 45th president of the United States, has not claimed that she lost the election due to Comey's announcements? Absolutely. Whatever you might think about her personal politics, she is one of the most intelligent, politically savvy, and experienced and focused civil servants this country has known. And she knows that she won the popular vote. That's not a matter that's up for debate. Now, my sources tell me that America's last legitimate president, President Barack Obama, faced with the information from our extraordinary intelligence community, convened a historic meeting in the Oval Office on January 5th, 2017, in which there were people in attendance, including the Vice President, Joe Biden, Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, and the heads of the U.S. intelligence agencies, who came together to discuss how they were to proceed in the midst of what was already a constitutional crisis. The moment that another country is able to install their candidate and supersede the election process in this country, it is a constitutional crisis. It's an act of war on our country. America would no longer have a legitimate president on the 20th of January, 2017. And the Obama administration understood that. Instead, the Moscovian candidate, a Russian operative and head of a criminal enterprise that will be revealed to include money laundering, extortion, sex trafficking, treason, and other high crimes against the United States and its people, was installed as the so-called president of the United States. Difficult decisions had to be made, including how to proceed in a matter that would result in the exposure and indictment of high-ranking officials within the RNC and GOP who were not only complicit, but who received and covered up enormous financial gains directly from Russia into the RNC, into the GOP, into their own pockets, as well as those of the co-conspirators who would be appointed as members of the cabinet and who continue to be appointed by KGB Agent Orange Donald Trump, who would financially benefit from Trump's refusal to enforce illegal sanctions that Congress enacted, or even to acknowledge that crimes against our country occurred. But how could he, when, like Mike Pence and Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, Dana Rohrabacher and Devin Nunes are all every bit as involved in the commission and cover-up of those crimes as Vladimir Putin, Michael Flynn, and Paul Manafort? How could he enact sanctions when they directly affect him and his involvement in this affair? My friends, it's time that we stop blaming James Comey, a man who has devoted his public career to his lifetime to public service in the highest and most commendable of regards. A man who may, like all of us, have some issues with ego, occasional lapses in judgment, and a tolerance, a lack of tolerance for the kind of ineptitude and corruption that I'm sure he witnessed in the Trump White House. And we must, I believe, start accepting that the Electoral College was bought and paid for by Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. Now, I don't care how many whores Trump paid to pee on a hotel bed, but I do care that his long history of paying off the parents of the boys and girls he sexually molested, the hush money paid to the adult entertainers with whom he engaged in adulterous affairs and witnesses to those affairs, his alleged illicit drug use, the decades and decades of demonstration that he lacks anything that resembles moral fiber or competence, and most important, the tens of thousands of lies that we've documented from him over the past 3 decades alone, because that information has given his boss in this criminal enterprise, Vladimir Putin, leverage over him and the other vile, morally bankrupt members of the GOP leadership, cabinet, and administration. Those who now work for Vladimir Putin at the American taxpayers' great expense. And my friends, I believe that it's time for mounting demonstrations for civil disobedience, and if necessary, a direct confrontation and revolutionary action, preferably nonviolent in nature, to end this criminal enterprise and restore what's left of this once great republic. This is John Michael Salvato. I thank you for watching the Resistance Report. Good night.